Hello, welcome. Today, I bring the video that many have been asking for, a comparison between Citron and Sudachi on Windows and Android. Additionally, we will talk about Citron's update and the regression that Sudachi showed in version 1.0.11 to help you choose the best project to play your favorite games. Citron Update. In the last 3 weeks, Citron has gone through several changes. The server crash on Discord and the migration to new servers caused some delays in updates, as I mentioned in previous videos. The full developer report is in the description for those who want to check it out. However, I warn you that even I, who usually read and simplify this type of report, had difficulty understanding everything that was changed. Among the most relevant changes to the core, there was an update that optimizes performance on Android devices with 12 GB of RAM. This was possible due to optimizations in the core and improvements in memory management. Additionally, several quality of life improvements were implemented in the project, update of several tools, keeping the development up to date and making future improvements easier, cleaning of unnecessary lines of code, reducing the app size, improvements in direct memory access, making information exchange between CPU and GPU more efficient, reducing latency and graphical glitches, especially in games with high graphical demands. This benefits next-gen GPUs without neglecting older hardware. Several dependencies were also updated, such as the QBEB audio API, Vulkan headers, FFmpeg, among others. However, most of these changes still don't bring direct performance benefits unless you're using an Android with 12 GB of RAM and have configured the emulator correctly. It seems the code is being prepared for future updates that might offer significant improvements. Another novelty is a build with the Antutu trick for Android, further prioritizing performance. I tested this version, and unlike the usual builds, it didn't make my CPU overheat or cause excessive battery consumption. Future of Citron. Don't expect major updates in the next few days. The developer informed that they will be busy with year-end obligations and need to take care of their pet cat. It will probably take a few weeks until we have relevant updates. Sudachi Situation. Sudachi, on the other hand, hasn't received fixes since Ryujinx was cancelled. I talked more about this in the last video, which is available in the card. Version 1.0.11 introduced several regressions on both Windows and Android. Examples include freezes in Shadow Generations, Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, and Princess Peach Showtime. Additionally, depending on your mod configuration, it may be impossible to run games like Zelda Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. That was my case. My recommendation is to download version 1.0.10 if you still want to use Sudachi. Even so, some games will still have issues. In the Android version, the errors are even more evident, as you'll see soon. In general, the newer games are more stable on Citron. Before we start testing, leave a like on this video so it reaches more people. If this is your first time on the channel, consider subscribing to support the growth of our work. Unfortunately, something related to Nvidia Capture or the emulators themselves broke the HDR recording functionality. For color quality fans, I apologize, but this time I won't be able to deliver HDR. When I tried to capture the videos in this format, the results were compromised. Therefore, I adjusted the opacity to avoid visual discomfort. Performance tests on Windows. Let's start by testing the performance of both projects in their Windows versions. The initial goal was to run the games at 1080p, but in some cases, we went beyond that. During the tests, I'll explain the details of each one. Bayonetta 3. With several mods applied and running at 1800p, thanks to a mod that changes the native resolution to 900p and the emulator's option to double it, we used this game as an example of upscaled resolution. In Bayonetta 3, performance was stable, without significant drops, even at this resolution. After recording for over 15 minutes and averaging different parts of the game, performance was almost identical on both emulators, with a slight edge for Sudachi, though almost imperceptible. Shadow Generations. Although I had previously tested and observed issues with Sudachi in this game, this time it ran without any errors. On Citron, setting the CPU to accurate mode ensured stable performance while playing at native resolution with a 120 FPS mod. Although my processor couldn't maintain that frame rate, the overall performance was similar, with a slight advantage again for Sudachi. Even so, we can consider it a technical tie. Zelda Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. When testing Zelda Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, we saw a literal technical tie. All metrics were nearly identical between the two emulators. After these 4 tests, I realized that repeating other games would be redundant since the results remained similar. If you want to play on PC, both Citron and Sudachi, version 1.0.10, deliver very close performance for most games. The choice of emulator can be based on what you find more comfortable to use. Citron tends to have slightly better compatibility, while Sudachi may achieve about 3 more frames in some cases. Performance tests on Android. Moving on to the Android version, we managed to make a more significant comparison. For context, I used a capture card to ensure no performance loss while recording the games. What you see in the video is exactly what you'd experience using the device. During the tests, I used a cooler with Peltier technology and a controller, both listed in the description in case you want to check them out or buy through the links. This directly supports the channel. Dragon Ball FighterZ. This is one of the games I always test, and when I don't, you guys ask for it. I performed a new test to show how the game is running. Despite several attempts on different Sudachi versions, the result is always the same: the game doesn't work correctly. Regardless of the applied configurations, when starting battles, it either freezes or crashes. Metroid Prime Remastered. This game runs very well on Windows, and I thought it would be interesting to bring a benchmark here, especially considering the imminent release of a new title in the franchise. However, we encountered problems with Sudachi. After at least 3 attempts to run the game, it always crashed randomly, returning to the emulator's home screen, making further testing impossible. On the other hand, one of the main games where Sudachi clearly stands out is Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. If you enjoy this game, it's worth using Sudachi, even if only to play it. Since the game is a Wii U port, it was developed in 32 bits, which prevents the activation of NC. This results in performance drops on Citron, with long pauses that completely disrupt gameplay and immersion. On Sudachi, although pauses still occur, they are fewer and much shorter. Additionally, resource usage, especially GPU, is more efficient on Sudachi. When it comes to Pokémon Sword running at 1080p, both projects handle the game decently, without any issues. Observing GPU usage, Sudachi consumes fewer resources, but this happens because Citron was configured with Antutu, which maximizes the device's performance. Since this game isn't very demanding, the best way to play it would be on a Citron build without Antutu. Either way, both projects offer a similar experience, with no graphical problems or performance drops. As for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, with 4 CPU-controlled characters on screen simultaneously, the results seem similar at first glance. However, a more detailed analysis of the gameplay revealed that Citron makes better use of the GPU, consuming about 10% fewer resources. Still, this difference shouldn't be a decisive factor in choosing the emulator, so I consider the result a technical tie, with Citron slightly more optimized due to its recent update. In the case of Super Mario Odyssey, a quasi-open-world game with large areas to render, many enemies, and a rich environment, Citron's improvements stood out. It delivered about 10% better performance and, more importantly, maintained stability during long gaming sessions. On Sudachi, the game frequently closed unexpectedly, compromising progress. During my tests, there was even a moment when Sudachi caused the device to reboot, while Citron kept everything stable. For Zelda Breath of the Wild, Citron showed some issues. Squares were rendered incorrectly, performance was below expectations, and water appeared white, similar to milk. On Sudachi, performance was better, with fewer graphical problems and properly rendered water. Overall, Sudachi performs better with this engine. Finally, for Zelda Echoes of the Wisdom, while it's still not perfect on either Android or Windows, it's playable by following the tips shared in this video. On Citron, the game showed occasional instabilities but ran on the first attempt and for a considerable time. On Sudachi, however, crashes were much more frequent. During 3 attempts, the game froze every time. I'm facing serious issues with the latest driver versions, or perhaps my game file has been corrupted. The fact is that Zelda Tears of the Kingdom isn't even running. Regarding performance, Sudachi offers better results in the game's initial areas, while Citron struggles with lower performance and frequent crashes. However, after a short time, the game crashes on both emulators, making it unplayable for me. And that's it for today's video, folks. Thanks for sticking around. See you in the next video.